Good afternoon. Thank you very much for your attention and for having us, and appreciate the speakers that have already spoken. It's been fascinating. We've covered some fairly serious topics, of course, with managing cities, natural resources, environment, counter-terrorism. Of course, you can't celebrate or commiserate without decent wines, so that's where my industry comes into the fold. I'll just give you a little rundown about how GIS and especially Esri's technologies have assisted our business. And we've been using these technologies for around 20 years, so I kind of see myself as the custodian of them rather than the inventor, but certainly where we're headed is an exciting space for us at the moment, and we've got we've been able to sort of pick up Esri's ArcGIS Online technology, and it's been a game changer for our business. A little about our company. This is our footprint. We're a big producer of wine. We produce about 30 million cases of wine a year. We export to 70 different countries. Have footprints certainly in Australia and New Zealand are quite large. We've just bought a large American company called Diageo for about $500 million, which is increasing our footprint over there. Half of California's now belongs to us, which is fantastic. We are responsible for brands such as Penfolds, Lindemans, which 4,000 bottles are drunk every hour. Blossom Hill, 12 glasses drunk a second. We have Wolf Blass, we have Rosemont, Sterling, and some of the larger wine brands in the world. So we have a large footprint. We are also the custodians of some very beautiful land, and we have some environmental and sustainable responsibilities. We also have a sustainable approach to our business, which veers from the environmental point of view, is more about business sustainability. So ensuring that we've got a long-term supply of our wine into the future. I'm just going to run through a few of our challenges and then answer these with how GIS has been successful for us. Unlike a lot of agriculture, we aren't really focused on producing more. We're focused on producing better quality wines. Markets are changing. People are no longer really excited by commercial grade wine. And I'm going to give you this diagram quite simplistically, and this is a very generalised view of it. Up the top there you have a $50 or a $60 wine. We call it mastige. In the middle there you have a sort of a $10 to $20 or $25 wine, and down the bottom you've got what's called a commercial grade wine. Correlating with these are different quality grapes, and our big focus at the moment is creating better quality wines. To do this, unlike most agriculture, we want to stress our plants. Take away water, you make it harder for them to grow. They produce smaller, more intense fruit, and that gives us better quality wine. Down the bottom there you can see the large massive grapes there, especially if you throw too much water on them. They don't produce that intensity of flavour that we're looking for our wine. So our number one focus as a wine business right at the moment is on producing more, better quality fruit, and that is an enormous challenge for us. Another challenge we have is really around climate change. We are affected year in, year out with flooding, winds, frost and fire. And quite frankly, what we're facing with the changing climate at the moment is terrifying. I'll paint you this picture. This is Dr. Christopher Rawson Penfold, the founder of Penfolds McGill Estate. He was around in 1844, 6 or 8 years after South Australia was settled. They had a winery, so they had their priorities right. But Christopher, this is what his world looked like back in those days. They had reliable winter rains. They had lower mean temperatures than what we do today, of course, and fewer extreme weather events. And they also had a regular vintage that they could time, and they knew what was coming at them each year. We fast forward to today, and this is what our world looks like. We have less reliable winter rains. We have higher mean temperatures, more extreme weather events, and we've got this phenomenon called vintage compression, which is essentially taking what used to take between 3 and 4 months worth of ripening and processing down to what can be as short as 6 to 8 weeks now. So the impact on our operations to manage this shortening of vintage is enormous. And we're talking about some very large wineries and processing plants that are all being hit all at the same time and then lay dormant for the next 10 months. Some stats and observations, I guess. Vintage is advancing up to 2 days per year. So this is the start of when our fruit starts coming to the winery, is coming forward 2 days every year and has been doing so for the last 30 years. Last year was the first time we almost had fruit come in prior to the new year. So we would have had 2 2015 vintages. It was really bizarre that we have to sit down and start contemplating what happens when we start doing this. There are 21 days between, 20 years ago, there are 21 days between the late harvest of early varieties, and today there are 7. And finally, in 1998, the bulk of Shiraz and Barossa ripened over 30 days. So you get this long, cool kind of process of ripening, and today it's happening all in 15 days. So like I say, this is a really terrifying reality for not just wine industry, but the whole of agriculture in Australia. Some of our other key challenges. We are a geographically disparate company. We exist across a wide footprint, often in very remote areas, certainly across the globe. We have a systems and tech overload. We're running about 300 applications, main applications on our IT program. GIS is but one of them, so we have too much tech. We have data and knowledge silos, and I know this won't be unfamiliar to many organisations where data ends up in a hard drive or a thumb drive or someone's computer, never to be seen again by the rest of the business. Getting technology into the right hands is another major challenge. How to keep it simple. It's very easy to get swept away with all of the fantastic new technology that's coming at you. Sometimes to keep it simple is the best approach. Juggling those two approaches is very tricky. And finally, I guess as well, we've got a lot of technical experts who are now running our business, but we have far less experts and a lot more generalists, and keeping them trained, empowered, and supporting them is a real challenge for us as well. And I'll just give you a little fun anecdotal look at data silos. This is my colleague Rowan. Rowan isn't a viticulturist, but for today's purpose he is. And there he is, he's in one of our vineyards. He's just finished his lunch, which was a meat pie, looking very satisfied. He's got his pie wrapper there. Rowan goes back to work and realises that he needs to take down some information. There are things changing in his vineyard. He's got to report this back. How's he going to capture this information? He's got a pie wrapper in his hand still. Now, you guys might be laughing at this, but this happens in our business so often. Next thing, Rowan goes to work and starts drawing a mud map of our vineyards. Critical information that's in his head, he's getting out of his head. At least it's being transcribed somewhere. And there's Rowan looking very proud of himself with his finished map. And this is A-grade GIS people. That information ends up scrunched up under the seat of his ute, and then I've got to pull his car apart to retrieve that information and put that into a database so that we can use this for some tangible outcomes. And there it is. There's a map of a vineyard. I guess our other major sort of challenge is how do we keep up with supply chain optimization? How do we get better quality fruit transported safely and efficiently from our vineyards to the wineries, processed and turned into good quality wines quickly, efficiently and sustainably? And that's an ongoing challenge that any business will face. And that's sustainable business growth. So I'll give you a couple of looks now at where GIS has been really relevant for our business. Here's a very rough guide to our supply chain, from planting and growing all the way through to packaging and distribution. And where GIS touches our business at the moment is in these little boxes here. So most of the way through viticulture and harvesting, and then we've just started tagging our barrels so that we can track them, and obviously tracking all of our finished product in the distribution chain. Referring back to our challenge of quality, and here we are taking some NDVI imagery. Now, this is stuff that we've been doing for 20 years, and it's been a sort of a foundation of us understanding variability on our land. We have blocks that are highly variable. We have A-grade fruit, which might sell for $3,000 a tonne over there. In the same block, C-grade fruit, which sells for about $400 a tonne over there. And we're picking all of this at the same time. It doesn't make sense. We've got some optimal quality outcomes here that we can achieve if we know a little bit more about our land. Our silver bullet has been to fly a third of our vineyards every year with an NDVI camera or a multispectral camera. We turn these into what we call PCD maps, plant cell density maps. For the layman, they are essentially an NDVI image. We then classify these images and have just started publishing these to ArcGIS online. So our vineyard managers can now get a really clear understanding of, within their vineyard, where are your good quality, sorry, I should just explain quickly, high vigour is that high growth, big canopy, lots of chlorophyll A and all that sort of stuff, and that's your big bunches of grapes with less intense fruit. Your stressed out areas that are producing the small, intense flavours, they're in the low vigour areas. So vigour has become a bit of a surrogate for quality, I guess, within our vineyards. And we're now sending this information via our portal to our vineyard managers in real time. What we started doing a few years ago, and this has changed since this was done, but we're now getting this information into the cabins of our utes and our harvesters and our field equipment so that we can provide our tractor drivers and our operators with real-time information so they can track this. They see themselves blipping through the block as a little dot, and up until recently, when they would reach a high-quality area, they would actually hit that little red light, and a truck would come along and they'd start picking that block separately. So you're split picking. You're taking A-grade fruit into this bin and C or B-grade fruit into another bin. So it's giving our winemakers a bit of flexibility back at the vineyard. So what we've been able to do, and again, we've used these split pick maps for a long time now. This process is now automated so that we don't even have two bins anymore. You've just got selective harvesters in the field sending different quality fruits in different direction based on where they are in relation to that split pick map down in the bottom left corner. Disaster management. So 2 years ago, we came back from our Christmas holidays extremely hungover on the 2nd of January, and we were faced with the prospect of a really large Adelaide Hills bushfire, one of our premium regions for sourcing great quality fruit for our wines. And as you can see there, this bushfire at 6 p.m. on Friday, the 2nd of January, those little red areas, I guess, are points of reference. By 1:30 on Saturday afternoon, that's how that fire scar has exploded through the Adelaide Hills, and it's a very serious issue for us. Smoke is more of a problem than the actual vineyard's been burnt. Of course, if a vineyard is destroyed by fire, there's not much you can do about that. But smoke acts a little bit like a house fire, where the smoky smell gets into the grapes. It turns the grapes into, it gives them a lot of smoky flavours. It's quite undesirable. So smoke taint is a major problem for us when there's a bushfire. Compounded with this was weather conditions where in the morning the wind is blowing strongly to the southeast. By the afternoon it's flipped around the other way and is blowing to the northwest. So we just can't deploy our people in one area knowing that that's where our areas of risk are. We've actually got to tune that a little bit. So we did some very, very simple GIS mapping here. Now, within my business, people only think I buffer. That's all they think I do. And that's fair enough, because I did, in this occasion, use the buffering tool in ArcGIS. It was the first time I'd ever used it. But I was able to sort of produce this type of information. We had this out within our business to the people who are responsible for securing our fruit by the following day. And essentially what we're doing is we're just safeguarding our supply chain against the loss of quality fruit. So we can see here, we can sort of really tally up quite quickly our high-risk areas. We might have a vague understanding that there are 2,500 tonnes of A-grade Shiraz potentially lost to smoke taint. How do we mitigate? Well, we source it from other areas. So we're able to sort of make decisions at a really critical time of our growing season to mitigate against the risk of these natural events. Now, 2 days later, 20 k's from that site, we were frosted. Can you believe it? Frost is a major problem for vines. It kills the grapes. It's as simple as that. On the left-hand side there, we've got some exaggerated 3D modelling, which allows us to model katabatic airflows, so it behaves the same as water, to understand where cold air is going to flow. And that's where we place our frost fans, these big turbines that blow the air through the vineyard and help us avoid frost. Here's, on the right-hand side, we realised 2 days after this bushfire we'd had some frost at one of our premium Riesling blocks up in the Eden Valley. So we threw a drone up in the air and we got some imagery that allowed us to go through and actually quantify the areas of the vineyard that were affected. By that afternoon, the vineyard manager had a really clear understanding of what had been knocked out. While we're there, we noticed this little bare patch up here. We're spraying chemicals and we're treating a vineyard that actually has dead vines in it. So it gives us an opportunity to go through and map our parts of the vineyard that need some repair work. What we've then done is been able to sort of take a lot of our vineyard information and publish it to portal now so that vineyard managers can make more informed decisions around the optimisation of irrigation, for example, where to send water, how much water is going to suffice for a particular area, how do we focus this towards varieties and quality vineyards where we need the water the most. And it's become a critical part of asset management on the right-hand side there. A very, very simple map just showing you where all of our irrigation assets are in a particular vineyard. We can map these now and maintain them and understand when there are issues, how it's come about and where it's going to affect other regions. Pest and disease is a major problem for grapes, and this year with all the rain that we've had in Adelaide, we're expecting to be bombarded with pest and disease. Prior to using mobile mapping technology, we were using paper and pencil, and this was only 2 years ago, and we would go out into a vineyard and we would do an assessment on that vineyard and quantify the level of risk within a vineyard. If it reached a certain critical point over that it was too pest affected or diseased, we would write the block off. No information there around location. We were geo-unenabled. So we started mapping this using ArcGIS Online and the Collector app and having this information pop back into a real-time management system, and we started to get these sorts of images. Now you'll notice red and orange and yellow is bad. That's where there's a lot of pest and disease. What was happening was this guy was spraying his vineyard for pest and disease, and the sprayer wasn't getting up to pressure as he would drive into the block, so the first 5 panels in our vineyard were not getting sprayed enough, and that's where all the pest and disease was happening. The middle of the block is actually quite fine. So we made a management decision just to pick the middle part of that vineyard and leave the ends out. Now that's a block that we otherwise would have written off. It's probably $500,000 worth of fruit there, and at least we're optimising our fruit intake because of a very, very simple piece of information that we're capturing from in-field mobile data capture. Some of the other things we've been able to do with mobile data is simply map our blocks so we understand our footprint. Going through and mapping all of our dead vines, which we can then hotspot. We can have these heat maps that show areas of high density of dead vines, so we can go and replace them, I guess, focus our attention on repairing our vineyards. Simple things like mapping our irrigation so we understand our assets, and then really critically as well as dashboarding. So this is sending this information to senior levels in management so they get an eagle-eye view on our business and what's going on. We've got a logistic solution now, which is a story unto its own, but I'll keep it really simple. This is where we're mapping all of the fruit as it's being picked, coming out of the vineyards, becomes a little blue dot on a map. It drives through a geofence and it pops up on a screen in our wineries so that our people can understand when our fruit is hitting the winery. Prior to this, we would have 12 or 15 or 18 B-double trucks with varying grades of fruit standing in the hot sun in the middle of summer cooking, and we're not able to process this in our winery because we don't know when this stuff is coming. Some of our fruit is coming from 10 hours away, and in the meanwhile the driver's stopped to have a little sleep because he has to, or he stopped at the bakery for a pie and a nice coffee, and he's running late and we don't see this. He just turns up when he wants to, or she, and no, there are no girl drivers. And suddenly our winery is under pressure because we don't know when this fruit's hitting it. It all comes at the same time, at the wrong time, and our winery operations are really stressed. We've got a little arrivals and departures dashboard akin to what you would see in an airport. The bottom picture there, that's in all of our rooms. It's even in the bathrooms at one of our wineries now, so people can see when stuff's actually arriving, get their so-and-sos together. And we've got a live BOME map now, which shows live harvester movements. So we can see what blocks have been picked in the black, what blocks need to be picked next, and rather than sending our harvesters all over the region picking, we can prioritise and optimise their flow. So how has this system worked? The critical thing here is it's been an online portal. We talk about web, it's been talked about most of the afternoon, and it really has been critical for us. We're getting away from laborious data and software-intensive desktop platforms into a web environment that gets this information out there in real time, and real time is the key for this. We've got other information such as climate, such as our field captured data, such as imagery, and we're starting to consume a lot more sort of web platform data into our system so that we get a better picture. We understand more about what's going on. We can then send this information to the field, to the desktop, or to our senior management for a dashboarding environment to make critical decisions around our land at critical times of the year. And ArcGIS Online via the server environment it's really been, like I say, our silver bullet for achieving this. So what has this helped us do? Well, we've been able to get a real-time view of our winemaking network. We now have a single point of truth. We have improved planning and response, and we're able to give people the right information so they can make better decisions more quickly. This has a flow-on effect for our business. Obviously, we have a strengthened global market. We have more better quality wine. We have a greater return on investment when it comes to operations and capital expenditure. And we have improved health and safety, and this is a really critical thing too. Moving forward is understanding that all of our people are safe. We have had an incident not so long ago where a guy in a tractor slid down the end of an embankment and ended up off the side of a cliff for 14 hours or something. We didn't know where he was. He didn't check in, and we had no idea where he couldn't get out of the side of the tractor because there was a tree there. So he's there hanging off a cliff until someone eventually finds him. And it's completely unacceptable. Within the mining industry, you have most people and most vehicles are tracked all the time. If you go into the wrong area, an alarm goes off in a control centre and you get an SMS saying you're in the wrong zone, etc. So improving HSE is a massive part of our business as well. So what is GIS being able to do? Well, we're partway there with this. This is not complete by any means. We've just started our journey. We are now able to grow and source better quality grapes, our big focus. We are managing climate change. We are making decisions now that are going to secure the future of our business to make sure that we will, for the next 20 to 50 years, conceivably be able to produce the same quality wines with the same flavour profiles to meet our market demands. We have a single point of truth for data, and it's happening in real time, again, really critical. And we are really helping and supporting our supply chain by being able to optimise movements of logistics and trucks and transport. Moving into the future, some grand plans for us is to, this information I'm giving you today is actually part of a story that our consumers really enjoy. When you start understanding a little bit about vineyards, our consumers really understand about vineyards. They become a lot more bought into our wines. It's actually a really important marketing mechanism. So we're going to start sharing this information via portals. We've just had our first iPad with some mapping information on it, a little simple web app that we've developed that is now publicly available so people can come in and search by region, see where their wine is coming from. Winemakers are using maps every day to explain the story of the region from which the wine is that you're drinking. And here's a little example of how we're using this with some demographics and some spatial intelligence, where we're actually mapping all of people in the greater region of Melbourne where they drink, and we call these areas wet areas. And the areas in red, we love those people. They buy a lot of good wine, they spend a lot of money with us, and we're pleased to be supporting them, and we want to support them more by getting more wine out to them. So it gives us an understanding of where our alcoholic environment is. Moving to the future, UAVs, we did an assessment on UAVs 2.5 years ago and wrote it off as an unviable technology, too hard, too expensive, too risky. Where that technology has come in 2.5 years is actually quite incredible. We've now got people coming at us. It's cheaper for us to fly drones than what it is to fly a fixed-wing aircraft with these things. It's an incredible advancement. We're still waiting for the price to come down, but at some point you've got to dive in, and I think we're almost there. Precision viticulture is, we're talking about real-time information, tracking harvesters. We're almost at the point where we can use driverless tractors. Tractorless drivers are interesting as well. I only had my first drink an hour ago. Robotics is another really interesting space at the moment. We've got a robotic pruner we're trialling, which goes through the vineyard and prunes. It can run 24 hours a day. It does about this much in a day, though, so we're not quite there with robotics. But we're doing some collaborative projects with some robotics people in Australia, and it's actually really interesting where we're going to get to in the next 5 to 10 years. Some of this technology is just incredible. Artificial intelligence, it is here. 10 years ago, we're talking about the use of iPhones or drones or whatever. Artificial intelligence is on our doorstep, and we're really keen to see how that's going to go. Probably replace people like me one day. And finally, organisational dashboards. As I said to you, it's really great for operators and people on the ground to be making decisions based on this information. How do we feed this information up to our managers? They don't want to read a spreadsheet or a report. Having a nice, neatly put together, sexy web map that people can have a look at, digest information, be able to go and communicate to the rest of the business really clearly and succinctly is so important. So we're getting to that point now where people are starting to use this because they really want to. And that's a fantastic story for us. I'm going to finish up there. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your day.